Welcome to the Typical Sportsman Podcast. I've got another one for you that at least I hope is going to be thought-provoking. At least I hope will cause you to consider, why do I do the things that I do? I've got Mr. Mark Olis from Moultrie and Justin Spring, Executive Director of the Pope & Young, and we're going to talk about the ethics behind trail cameras, more specifically, cellular trail cameras. So in the past, Pope & Young had the standpoint that cellular trail cameras were unethical. No question about it. That was the line that was drawn. However, not real recently. It's been a while since the position has changed, but we have since changed our position on cellular trail cameras. We share why we had the old position, and we share what went into the changing of the position. However, more so than all of that, what we talk about is how technology is a good thing, but it can be abused. It can become abused in hunting situations. And so we just want to encourage you as an outdoorsman and as a sportsman to consider everything, not just trail cameras, to consider everything. Why do I do the things that I do? Is it being beneficial to the wildlife? Is it playing a beneficial role to the management of wildlife? Have I become self-reliant on this thing, or is it just a tool in my arsenal that I am using? It's a really fun episode. It's a good episode, and it's an episode that, again, I hope will challenge you to think about some of the things that you do as a sportsman and why you do them. Guys, this episode is brought to you by my phenomenal friends over at ScentLock. They have just recently introduced some new products that I think are going to be absolute game changers. Some more everyday technical type pieces, some pants that I'm super excited about. Here's what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to go to ScentLock and check out their entire lineup, especially the BE1 toolkit. It's a toolkit built by bow hunters for bow hunters. Every piece of the gear was thought about in terms of bow hunting. It's a phenomenal gear system. Go check out some of the new pieces. Make sure and look into the activated carbon for maximum odor absorption, which in my opinion is what really sets ScentLock apart, especially for the whitetail hunters, because scent plays such a huge role in that. Go check them out at scentlock.com. Guys, let's jump in and talk about the ethics behind cellular trail cameras and the use of them. Are they good? Are they bad? When should we not use them? How should we use them? It's a fun episode, and I hope it'll get you thinking.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
We talk a lot about our favorite bows, about our favorite camo, our favorite arrows, and we invest a lot of money into the gear that we use. Listen, that investment does not matter if you're not healthy enough to get out in the woods. That investment of your camo does not matter if you can't make it up the mountain to where the elk are. One of the best investments you can make is investing in your health, investing in the longevity of you as a hunter. Guys, Mountain Tough is truly changing lives of people all around the world. It's changed my life. It's changed lives of people like Mr. Randy Newberg. His testimony about Mountain Tough is absolutely phenomenal. He's even partnered with them to help make a program for people 50 and over because he's so passionate about what it's done for him in his life. Guys, Mountain Tough truly is incredible. And I want to give you a chance to try it for 6 weeks completely free. When you use the code TYPICAL, all caps, typical, you're going to get the original 14 days free, but then you're also going to get an additional 30 days free, 6 weeks of free training. Give it a shot, give it a try, and just see. I promise you in that 6 weeks, you'll feel better. You'll perform better. You'll look better. Everything about your life will improve if you just give it a chance. If you don't like it at the end of that 6 weeks, no harm, no foul. But I want to give you a chance to try it free for 6 weeks. Again, Mountain Tough, use code TYPICAL, all caps, and try it for 6 weeks completely free. All right, we've got Mark and Justin. I'm excited about today, gentlemen. I've told both of you that I've kind of been on this, I don't want, journey's not the right word, but just this, for lack of better terms, journey of just why do I do what I do? Is the ethics behind this correct, or is it because it's what I've always been taught? Is this just the culture that I've adopted? And so with the Pope and Young stance change on cellular trail cameras, which Justin, I'll have you give me the rundown on what it used to be, kind of what it is now, and why we made that choice. But with that change comes the question of, well, why do I use cellular trail cameras? You have to ask yourself that question. And so, Justin, just to kind of recap, what was in the past Pope and Young's, and you can even cover this from a Boone and Crockett standpoint as well. What was the standpoint on cellular trail cameras and the ethics behind them?
So originally, a lot of these fair chase things, when they were brought in, poison tipped arrows was kind of reverse. Pope and Young did it. BNC followed with the trail cameras. To the best of my knowledge, Pope and Young followed BNC's policy that said if an animal was caught on a camera that transmitted images to the hunter, it was not eligible. And this actually went back to the original time that there was like a trail timer that, anything that was notifying the hunter, transmitting information to the hunter on real-time location, they had an overall ban on it. Obviously, with technology increases and whatnot, the cellular camera, gained popularity. It got to the point where technically, if you looked at that rule, well, if I get a picture of a fawn, in essence, per fair chase rules as it reads, that deer is basically safe for its entire life from ever getting entered into the records book, which obviously that wasn't the intention. That wasn't what they started with. So that started the conversation between both organizations of, okay, we don't like this idea of on-call hunting where somebody's sitting in their basement watching cameras and like, oh, there's a deer out in front of stand 6. They sneak out there and shoot it. That's what we were trying to do. That's where we said that's crossed the line. If you're not out there actively pursuing and you're notified that there's a deer or an elk or whatever it may be there, we don't want the hunter to just sit there and go kill it. So how can we modify this to be a little more reasonable? I mean, trail cameras obviously are an awesome thing. You can, use them for monitoring a lot of things beyond just target deer or whatever. And so that was kind of the start of it. And that's when both organizations got together and started throwing ideas back and forth on how do we modify this wording that still gives the animal a fair chase to, fair chase to elude you, but at the same time doesn't, prohibit the use of a really cool technology that can be quite useful if not abused. So that's where we started that.
Yeah. And I heard one way that I really heard this put well was from Jim Willems, who's on our board, past president. And, he was serving as president during a lot of this technology shift and a lot of these technologies being introduced. And I heard him put it like this. He said, I've got trail cameras, cellular cameras on my driveway for security reasons. And a deer walks across my driveway in June. I get a picture of it. What's unethical about killing that deer, 600 yards away from a tree stand that I had, that I've scouted and hunted that deer from? What's unethical about that? And so in my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's nothing unethical about it just because at one point in its life had a picture of it transmitted to a cell phone. And I think it all boils down to this. I think it all boils down to your reasoning behind using technology. And that is, guys like Moultrie and they make a phenomenal cellular trail camera that works really well with my phone. And what it does is it limits my footprint in that ecosystem. It limits me going in and out of there, changing batteries, checking SD cards, driving in and out, to do those things. It's limiting the amount of pressure I'm putting on those deer and on just the land itself. And so it's limiting the foot traffic going in and out. So is it fair to say, and either of you I think can speak to this, is it fair to say that used in the correct way, we're all agreeing that it's unethical to use them in fair time, in real time, meaning I get a picture of a deer, I run out there and try to kill it. That's unethical. But is it fair to say that given the right way, used in the right way, it actually increases, it's helping the deer population even more?
I think you can say that for sure. And this is where, all the ethical discussions get a little bit muddy, because on the one hand, yeah, you're not pressuring the deer. Your exposure going in there and out there is not happening. On the other, though, have we not used technology to take away one of the deer's senses to detect us, which is how they survive? And so this is where you really start, okay, am I only doing it because I can't get into this tree and set a camera and not blow out the deer? If you're going to lean on technology, I'd say some hunters may not agree with that. Now, we're not saying overarching that's bad, but, anytime we have these things, we got to have these considerations. Now, you can't go check everything, whatever. People's time is limited. I understand that. My other thing, and another way that I think this technology can be abused, I mean, if you're not limited financially and you can afford a bunch of leases, how big of a footprint can you have using all technology in your, wheelhouse? And is that really fair to other hunters? And so again, it's always a balance. Inherently, cellular trail cameras doesn't mean you're a bad hunter. It all comes down to why am I using it? What does this bring me? And we need to do that with anything we use, any type of hunting tool or anything you're using. That's where Pope and Young wants to get, and Boone and Crockett as well, is just have the hunters really think about, am I leaning on technology, or is this just something, I've got in my tool belt, but I'm not relying completely on this, which is, we would argue if the animal's caught on a camera, sends you a picture, and you just go and shoot it, well, you're completely relying on the technology to hunt, and so that's the conversation. And Mark, I'd like to hear your take on it. I mean, like I said, I can see some of the arguments against it, but I've also had people call me and say, well, it's not fair to be in a tree stand because a deer doesn't naturally look up. Well, there does come a point where it's like, come on, guys.
Right.
We've got to do a little bit, use our brain a little bit in our harvest. So, what's your take on it? Where do you see the line on some of this that you think it goes from, useful technology to, maybe we're a little bit too reliant on it?
Yeah, well, we're talking about humans. So we're talking about people that are, there's going to be guys that abuse things. And then there's going to be the guys that do things right. The way I side with it is, the cellular technology is also making a more informed hunter as well. So if you do have intel from a property, a place you're hunting, Pope and Young, for example, not just a great conservation organization, but they also have a record book of quality animals, right? So there's this, stature to it. And, a guy using a cellular trail cam, he's able to see the quality of animals on that property. So if he's seeing like, hey, I've got some really nice animals that I would like to pursue these, he's also letting the younger generation of animals walk, So there is from that more informed perspective, you can get a conservation aspect from that, and we know all of those things from a management standpoint are good if you've got mature animals on down the line. If you have that whole recruitment of upcoming bucks, you have a more intense breeding and age structure and things like that. So I do think there is an aspect where you have more informed hunters able to maybe make better management decisions, wildlife management decisions as well, using the cellular trail cameras.
You might be the wrong person. You might be the wrong person to tell this to, Mark. I've oftentimes said that I miss when I didn't have trail cameras. Because when I started hunting, they were the size of a stinking TV, and they took 412 D batteries, like just not feasible. And so I didn't use them, and I missed that like excitement of being in the tree stand and like you have no idea what's there. You know, there's a bunch of tracks, you know, there's deer coming through here, but then you just got to sit and see what comes through. And like the first time you see a buck, you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that there's bucks out here or not. Like, this is cool. But I do agree with you. They have, you know, in the same sense. And I look at it kind of from both sides, because I become addicted to my Moultrie app for the, 6 months for the last 6 months of the year. Cause I'm constantly checking pictures, and I'm constantly like, if it goes off in the middle of the night, I got to get up and see what it was, and so it kind of creates in me too much of the trophy hunter mentality that I kind of don't want to have. I shouldn't say trophy hunting. Sorry, Justin. We'll share with you later as to why we don't like the terminology trophy hunting. Selective hunting. It kind of creates in me that more selective hunter that I try not to be sometimes. But you're right. It does inform me of the age structure that's going on. It does help me make more ethical choices in what deer I'm going to remove off of the property, because I see how they're interacting all year. I see, I can see that, oh, this buck here, he's becoming a bully. He's pushing younger bucks around. He's fighting the younger bucks, causing them to break their antlers off early. Like, this deer is a deer that needs to go. And you can see that stuff and make more of a conscious decision. And I think it all boils down to this. And I think Justin would echo this. Sometimes Pope and Young has to be the organization that draws the hard line in the sand and says, this is too far. But more so than that, we just want to be the person that is helping you to digest, is what I'm doing ethical? Am I making smart decisions? Am I doing things that benefit the animals, the species? Am I doing things that benefit our passion for bow hunting? Or am I doing this because it makes it too easy? Am I doing this because I can't kill a deer without it? Like, you have to ask yourself those questions and challenge yourself. Yeah, there's things we have to draw lines in the sand on and say, we absolutely can't do this. We absolutely can't allow this. But with something like the trail camera, I think it came down to, we just want people to consider the ethics behind it. We want people to consider the reason behind it. And we want people to realize that this is a good technology. It can be abused just like anything, but it is a good technology.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, you're looking at how deer's interacting. I mean, when I was at Boone and Crockett doing the entries, every deer that made the book, if you looked at tooth replacement and wear, was 3.5. Well, we know that's not the case. A trail camera system set up where you're watching your property and you watch the same deer in the same area for 5 years, and like, oh man, that buck was actually 6.5. Like that to me is a great use. There was a research project done in Western Montana where they were looking at scavenging of carcasses to see what the uptake was for potential lead exposure for eagles. That was done through Parrish, or one of Parrish's buddies, Dylan. And so as a hunter, if you got an animal down, they'd give you a trail camera and say, hey, go set this on there. I mean, that's the type of stuff that the cellular camera is great for, to teach the hunter, like, learn the species, learn the habitats, learn what else is going on. Like, are your deer getting freaked out because there's, a mom mountain lion that every 2 years shows up with 2 cubs and lives there the whole year? That, to me, that's the strength there. And it's, again, like I tried to allude to, you don't want to tell somebody, oh, you're using it wrong. The hunter has to think about it. Am I using it as a crutch? Or am I just using this technology to become more informed, a better hunter? Ensure I'm, maybe you may not hunt a property for a year because your intel tells you, like, dude, I don't have a buck on me older than 3.5. Like, maybe I need to go find somewhere else this year and let this, or, maybe I'm not hunting a big buck this year. Maybe I need to take some does off. And so, how do we as an organization, without saying you can't use this, get people thinking about it? And at the end of the day, that's our goal. It's not to keep people out of the book, or that's not to, ensure they can't get an entry. It's to say, hey, let's make sure game populations are healthy, they're thriving, they're on the landscape. Are you fortunate enough to get one? Great. That's an amazing accomplishment. We'd love to have the entry, but don't prioritize that over ethics and everything that hunting used to be. Don't make it an execution of a particular target deer to get your name in a book. That was never what it was intended to be,
Right.
And so we, like Dylan said, I mean, Fortunately, I live in a state where most of the deer we're hunting are migratory. It doesn't do me a pile of good to have cameras out all year, because that deer is only there for maybe 10 days out of the season, and you could use it for that, obviously, to see, hey, this is when they're in this area. But you got to remember, each area is a little bit different too. And so, migratory deer, I still have that. I still, even if I've hunted an area forever and I know the bucks that I've seen in there, you can have one that goes on a walkabout. And so, maybe you just got to get out of Kansas, Dylan, and come out west a little bit more for that. Where did that come from factor?
Yeah, no kidding. No, it's funny that you say that, because I actually do. One of my properties, probably the property that I do hunt the most, it doesn't matter what the year's like. It doesn't matter if it's a good crop year. It doesn't matter if it's a dry year, wet year. It doesn't matter. This particular property, I do not have any bucks until, October 28th, 29th. Then all these bucks start showing up. I've got, I don't want to say hundreds of does. I've got pictures of, 50 plus does in the field all summer long, but the bucks just don't live there. And then come November, here they all come. And so it's a unique property, and it changes constantly. But, I think another thing that, and I want to ask this question, and honestly, I don't know who would have the best insight to this. So there are states that are banning the use of trail cameras altogether. And first off, what's the reasoning behind that? What's the end goal for that? And where do you stand on it? Like, why are they doing it? Is it beneficial? Like, what is the end goal they're trying to achieve going to be accomplished by banning trail cameras?
I think from a wildlife management perspective, it's the same dilemma. Are we banning them because we don't like them? Is it just, nope, we don't like cameras? Well, I'd argue that's not correct. Arizona had a situation where water was extremely limited. They were covered up in cameras. It was actually hurting the resource. Well, in that case, yeah, I completely, the organizations completely supported Arizona's ban. But that doesn't mean just because there's only one water guzzler and 150 or 1,000 acres that we paint the entire brush across the country that trail cameras are bad. And so every state that's looked at it, some of them have had valid reasons. Some of them, from a management perspective, we would support as an organization. Others that just don't want them because of the, kind of a false narrative or personal preference, I would say that's not a reason to ban them. If you can show scientific evidence that it's got a negative effect, 100%, the conservation groups are going to support you. But just because you don't like something, that doesn't justify a ban, I guess, is where we would sit. Mark, what about Moultrie? Is that kind of what you guys have seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to your point, I think Arizona is a great case. Water is such a scarce resource. If you got a bunch of cameras and a bunch of guys going into a place to set cameras, that's not a good thing. But also to your point, Justin, yeah, some of the bans seem more like knee-jerk reactions. Don't really have you can't really connect the dots to your point, Dylan, like what's the end game? So it's like, well, we're just banning them, and then, I think sometimes the cameras get lumped into trying to, diagnose an issue. And it's like, well, let's take that off the board. Let's pull this off the board. And maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. And it's not really being measured, but it's at least showing they're doing something. And then, like anything, you're going to have folks that complain about things. I don't like, one guy likes trail cameras, one guy doesn't like trail cameras. So who's being the loudest in these meetings as well when there's public opinion? So there's a host of things that play into it. If it's something that's bad for wildlife, understandable. If it's just, hey, we're doing it. Yeah, that, Justin, I'm with you in Moultrie. That doesn't make sense. Right. At the end of the day, when the cameras are being used appropriately, you are spending less time in those sensitive areas, and you're able to monitor from afar and allow those animals to move naturally and not be pressured like you were saying.
So other than the example of there being not enough water and, just kind of overpopulating that one area, is there any other reason that you would say, hey, I wouldn't use trail cameras here?
I mean, personally, I'm not seeing a reason. I'm not seeing an overwhelming reason for that. Again, can a guy abuse it? Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a reason to ban it? I don't know. A guy can abuse the headlights on his truck, in wildlife instances, but we're not outlawing headlights on vehicles, Right. So it's one of those areas. It's like, what's happening? Are we just banning it because we don't want to mess with it? So that's kind of where you got to look at it.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. And I attribute a lot of that to the hunter ethic and fair chase. But, I would see the only other time that we could consider a technology ban would be if the non-hunting public incorrectly assumed what it was doing for us, right? So if they thought a technology just made it a guaranteed kill. I always use that statistic, 78% of the country doesn't hunt, but supports it. As much as hunters, we got to be together. We got to stay in lockstep. Guys, I hate to break it to you. We're 6-7%. If we're all lockstep and that 70 whatever doesn't agree with us, we're going to get outvoted. And so you always have to keep an eye to that. But, that's the efforts and why we love having you on here is like, hey, here's a technology. It could be abused. As a community, let's bring it. You're right. This could happen. This is not how the average hunter or 99% of your hunters is using it. So I think, this is a proactive step that the public doesn't get a false perception that, I just go throw out a bunch of these cameras and wait till a deer shows up and I can go kill it. How hard is that? To me, that's a big concern. Not the case, but to someone that hasn't spent, that much time in the woods, wait, there's a camera that's constantly recording that tells them when the deer are there. That doesn't seem fair. That's what I think our other big challenge with cameras is just letting folks know and leading the discussion of, you could do that, but we would never do that as an ethical hunter.
Yeah. And I'll add to that as well, Justin, because I do get asked this question a lot about the ethics and things like that. And I kind of, the one way I like to explain it is, you still have to be a woodsman, right? You still have to go into the landscape, find sign, know what you're looking at, and then set a camera up. Because, if you just walk into the woods, throw a camera on a tree, well, good luck getting wildlife on there. Yeah, you're going to catch something stray coming through. But, the guys that are using this technology have the woodsmanship, the know-how. You still have to scout and place the camera. And then just because the camera's there, it's not shooting the animal for you. You have to still go do your part as a hunter. You just have intel that you can utilize, when you do go hunting.
Yeah. Know what I mean? That's the thing. If you use it to make yourself a better woodsman, you've studied the wildlife, and you can say without a doubt, like, hey, I've got the wind, I've got the moon, I've got everything that I think affects this deer is coming together. This is the stand to sit. That's exactly what you need to be using this stuff to do, is get yourself to that level. Dylan, I can't remember who it was, but you got the buddy that hunts 2 days a year or whatever and kills the 2 bucks he can because he's that dialed in. That's not abusing a technology. That's just getting that educated and using what's to your abilities to become that good in the woods and beat that deer at his game. And I don't think that's relying on technology. That's learning all the factors that the technology allows you to view the deer to get the information you need to figure out what you need to be doing.
Yeah, for those of you who have never heard me talk about this cat, he's the type of dude that hunts like 2 days a year. And at first it makes you mad because you're like, dude, you're the luckiest son of a gun I've ever met in my lifetime. You go out and kill a 180. Like how? Like, I don't even get it. This year it was like a 197 or something. One day goes out and kills it. And quite literally, like, and once you learn from him, he's like, well, dude, I don't go out to hunt just to hunt. Like, I have my cameras running and I'm monitoring what deer are there. And I don't go out until the barometric pressure is perfect, the temperature is perfect, the wind direction is perfect, the moon phase is right, the wind speed is right. And I go out, and yeah, sometimes I go out 3 or 4 times. Sometimes it's the first time. But every time I go out, all of those factors are exactly right. I don't just go hunt just to say I'm in the woods. And so there's a lot to learn from that. Like, there's a lot to learn because he's making good decisions, but echoing our point, like, he's not just putting a footprint in the woods just to put a footprint in the woods. Like, he's putting the least amount of pressure on these animals that he possibly can. Now, that being said, there is some technology built into the Moultries to help you understand that stuff. So walk us through, Mark, just a little bit about the technology that Moultrie has built in, because it's so much more than just a picture that it sends to your phone, because it helps you grow as a hunter, as a sportsman, as a woodsman. It helps you grow and understand how these deer are acting in those situations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so to that point, like that's what when we talk about the Moultrie app, we reference it as your one app for all your hunt planning. It has the detailed mapping on there, property lines, property info, satellite imagery, topo lines, all those things. You can drop all your pins, your camera location pins. So you've got that full mapping outlay in there. You also have a full weather outlay. So then you can go look at your wind directions, your barometric pressures, your forecast coming up. So to your point, like that gentleman you're talking about, you can plan that right time to go through there. And then there's some cool features built in. Another technology word, that big buzzword, is AI, right? Artificial intelligence. And the way that Moultrie utilizes that AI is that allows us to identify specific species. So that way, when you go into your gallery in the app and it's deer season and you're like, hey, I don't want to see all the raccoon images and all that, or the wind-blown grass. I just want to see my bucks. You can click a smart tag in there for bucks only, and then now you're looking at only the bucks that have come through your cameras. So it's giving you, it's helping the hunter utilize the aspects of the system that he wants to. In turkey season, there's a smart tag for turkey. So then your gallery is only populated with your turkey images, allowing you to quickly go through and look at that stuff. But those cameras are also used in a security environment. So that AI is applied to people and vehicles as well. So you can set a specific camera up to say, hey, if a person or vehicle shows up, I want to get a notification, a text message on my phone so I can see, hey, is this someone that's supposed to be there? Or, do I need to alert the local law enforcement or something like that? We have customers that use the cameras in that capacity. And then, we also have that deer forecasting model built in there, Game Plan. And Game Plan's a pretty cool feature set inside of the system. It's your look forward. So it's forecasting deer movement, but it's doing it at a localized level, and it's using data input coming directly from the Moultrie cameras. So, that those Moultrie cameras are tracking, bucks, does, all that stuff. So it's pulling in recent movement of these animals along with the forecasted weather outlays that are known to increase or decrease deer movement. And it's giving you a predictive outlook, like, because we're all busy. I mean, we've all got jobs and families, and if you're like, hey, I got some vacation to burn, but, man, Tuesday is not going to be good, but boy, Thursday morning is going to be great. Well, it gives that guy an informed decision to say, well, heck, I'm better off burning my vacation day on Thursday. Doesn't mean he's going to get an animal, but it does mean the odds of movement are higher on that day based on those inputs. And then there's also an activity charting feature, which is a look back, and it shows these really nice, easy to read graphs. So, and you can do that by species, by buck, doe, turkey. And it shows like time of day movements, temperature, when the game was moving the most. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of allowing you to process that info and say, well, here's how I need to maybe utilize or hunt this area. Like, mornings have been really good, and now I'm looking at my predictive game plan model. Thursday morning's looking good. Maybe I should go on that day,
Yeah. No, it isn't. It's an incredible tool. And I'll say this, I argued with him. This is my apology to Matt Ross from the NDA. Because I argued with him that all of these factors that he said don't play a role in deer movement. And I said, dude, you're crazy. Like, he even said cold fronts don't play a role. Out of all these studies, we've never seen that cold fronts increase or decrease deer movement. And I'm like, dude, you are absolutely high on something. However, I have to go back and say, because of the app, I went back and he said the number one factor that actually has a toll on the deer movement, an influence on the deer movement, is wind speed. And I went back and looked at my app, and sure enough, like, you can see the deer movement with that wind speed more than any other factor that you would look at. And so, Matt, my apologies, dude. You're right. Moultrie proved it for you. You're welcome. All your studies at the NDA, Moultrie proved them. Now I got to ask a question, and this is a little off topic. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, man, maybe in the whitetail world where they were doing that, but cold, to me, it's all the factors. Like, there's
now, let me say this.
Priorities.
This is
so I guess here's my thought. Like
the NDA, National Deer Association.
Yeah.
And he did say, he was like, listen, you ask any hunter, myself, and anybody at the NDA included, if we look at the weekend and there's a big cold front, we're going hunting. Like, because we've, that's what we've learned over the years, is that cold fronts, move deer more. He's like, but I'm here to tell you, out of all the studies in all the states, it's never been proven that a cold front causes deer to move more and or less.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's always been a barometric change because the animal doesn't know what's
100%,
happening.
Yeah.
And, from a biological standpoint, you may have 2 or 3 days that you can't feed. Over millennia of adaptation, you're going to get up and feed if you're going to be a successful animal. Maybe we've pushed that out of them, but, I guess my thought on it is, like, there's so many factors, and it's like anything in wildlife. It's never one thing. If we just look at the wind, you're not going to be a good hunter. If you just look at the moon phase and what the prediction is, if it's a good day or a bad day, you're not going to be a good hunter. Now, if you can find the perfect wind with the cold front coming in at the peak time of the year with the moon phase correct, well, those are those days that we talk about for the next 20 years. And so, that to me, it's all those factors, which is, I think if you lean on one factor, perhaps
I'll say this. I think that the cold fronts usually bring the other factors that play a bigger role. And so you don't oftentimes see a cold front that doesn't influence the other factors that are playing a bigger role in the deer. And so, but to his point, he was saying just specifically temperature change and the cold doesn't increase deer movement. I argued with him, and he even argued with himself. He's like, I mean, based off personal experience, I'm going to say the same thing. Like, it does, but all the studies have always shown that it doesn't. You all know I love arrows. So therefore I love vanes, and I love trying different vane configurations. I love seeing how they fly, how they tune, how quiet they are. Boning archery makes, in my opinion, the greatest selection of vanes known to man. And for good reason, because they've been making vanes longer than your grandpapa's been alive. They make a phenomenal line of vanes. So whatever you're trying to do, whether you're wanting to shoot paper, 3D, or you're wanting to go out and hunt, whether you're shooting a crossbow, compound, they've got vanes for you. Now, they just recently introduced, in my opinion, the greatest vane of all time, which is the Alpha. It's an all-new design. It's made out of the same stiff material that my previous favorite vein, the heat vein, is made out of. So it's whisper quiet. It stabilizes your arrow very well. And it's just an all around great vein. Now, they also just introduced the Atlas, which is the same shape and profile as the Alpha, out of the same classic blazer material. Guys, here's what I'll tell you. Boning simply makes really good products. If you are an arrow tinkerer like me and you want to try a bunch of different veins, I would highly encourage you to go try out Boning. Some of my favorite veins are definitely the heat vein. The heat vein in a 4-fletch is almost unbeatable, just barely outdone by an alpha vein in a 3-fletch with a hardcore left helical. That's just money every single time. Guys, go check out Boning, whether you're looking for, longer 4-inch veins, whether you're looking for micro veins, they've got something for you. And I promise you it's going to perform every time. Now, I got a question. This is completely off topic. However, you said something really interesting, and it might play a role in the trail cameras. I guess I'll see how you answer. I've recently started watching Yellowstone. Now, full disclosure, as a pastor, I watch it on VidAngel because they take out all the 400 billion cuss words every episode. Watch it on VidAngel. However, you said something about people buying up all this land. Is there actually any real unethical reason just because you have enough money to buy up land?
Well, so it's like anything, we talk about a lot of factors in wildlife, and energy is a hot one now, right? We've got different energy sources, whatever. There's always a loser regardless. You don't like salmon, build dams. You don't like birds, build wind farms. Okay, right? So no matter what it is, there's a loss. The end of the day, the way to combat that is to reduce your footprint. And so in a lot of things, you don't want to have a giant footprint on the landscape. There's a lot of us. There's getting to be more and more of us. The bigger footprint you have, the less area there is for whatever it is you care about. Buying up land isn't inherently bad. It's a great investment if that's what you want to do. The issue is when you start taking away opportunities from hunters for a public resource by locking it up and not allowing, and I'm not saying you need to let everybody that asks on every one of your acres, but if you buy a ranch that historically they let 10 guys go on every year for elk season and you don't care, man, like that's where you get to the problem, Dylan, is taking land out of production for, management of wildlife or wildlife production. You look at farming practices, stuff's getting pulled out of farming practices. Okay, well, what's the side effect of that? There's a figure, what is it, 7 bushels of corn per acre or something like that goes on the ground as waste. Well, that's food for wildlife. So the whole thing is like, be cognizant of your footprint, and I'm guilty of it too. How many states do I hunt? How many states am I putting in for? Now my wife and my son is putting in for it. Is my footprint too big? And just think about that. That doesn't mean don't buy that other property. That means don't hunt 2 or 3 states. Just be cognizant that you aren't taking a bunch of people's stuff away by purchasing land and locking them out that maybe their families hunted or people have hunted for, generations.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just, as I was watching this series and, I realize I'm behind the curve. Everybody has seen it by now, but as I watch it, you hear people complain about, well, how big their ranch is, and it's not fair that one man should have all this. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to shame the guy because he's been successful and bought land. However, then I started thinking about the same kind of things you're discussing, and it goes back to this. And this is what I want to encourage my listeners to do. This is not coming from Pope and Young. This is coming from Dylan. I just want you to, and I want to encourage you to consider everything that we do as outdoorsmen and why. Like, if you can't tell me why you're doing something and the purpose behind it, and does it benefit wildlife, then why are we doing it? And really, and I've said this, I still get a lot of comments actually about the Let It Go episode that we did with Chris Parrish. And this kind of started that kick in me, about, well, yeah, I've never considered the impact that lead could have on the wildlife. And by every stretch of, I'm following the law and I'm doing everything ethical to my understanding. But if you were just to stop and consider things for just a minute, you would realize what you're doing. And so I just want to encourage everybody to consider, why are we leasing up all this ground? I mean, to your point, Jay, I've got buddies who lease ground and they don't even hunt it. They're just hoping a deer might show up there, and they keep leasing it every year, and they haven't hunted in 4 years because, well, there hasn't been a big buck, but there might be, so I got to keep leasing it. And I'm like, but now for 4 years, you've taken the opportunity for somebody else to go out and shoot a doe and be ecstatic, and they don't have anywhere to hunt, but you're tying up land just because a big buck might show up one year. Like, that to me is unethical. Unethical or selfish. I don't know the word to use there. But I don't think you're considering the why, and I don't think you're considering the impact, and I don't think you're considering what you're doing. I think you're just doing it because it might benefit you in the future. It doesn't benefit the wildlife. It doesn't benefit the management of the wildlife. It doesn't benefit other hunters and outdoorsmen. And so that's just what I want for people to be cognizant of. And I would say that's Pope and Young's goal in the end, is to get people to think about why we do what we do. And so to kind of get back on the trail cameras, it's the same standpoint that we take as far as radios go. We're not saying you can't have a radio in the backcountry to be able to keep track of your buddies, but what we're saying is you can't use them to hunt in real time. Justin can't sit up on the mountain and I'm down in the valley and Justin saying, go to the left, the bull's over there, go to the right, go tuck behind that tree, he's coming your way. That would 100% be unethical. So it's the same standpoint we take on that as far as radios go.
Well, interestingly, Dylan, you hear a lot of, well, what if it's, why don't we just go with what's legal? There's a couple states that is right in the regulations. You can use a radio to talk someone into a game animal. And,
Really?
Yeah. Arizona's one state that allows it, and Oregon's another, where I grew up. And man, it was a battle even before I was involved with BNC and all that. My dad and his buddies, there was a big group of them that would deer hunt, and they'd be on the radio just chattering, and I just shut it off. Like, well, how do you know this deer's coming? It's like, that's hunting. It's okay if they get away once in a while. I don't need this all-out assault of this clear cut of these poor little blacktails by 10 dudes all on radios. And so I do, in that case, I mean, I do think that, that's not, I've sprained my ankle. I've got a pack full of meat and I'm worried I'm not going to get out of here. That's a good use of that technology. Me sitting up there and okay, 10 feet to your right, there's a rock. If you stay under this level, you'll be good, and walk them right in. That's not fair in my opinion, not fair to the deer. And so that's why that rule is in place.
It's also thinking about, how can I help the public land or the local land? Like, how can I do more for it than just take from it? For example, this past Saturday, you're talking about NDA, Moultrie and NDA, and my son's local high school environmental club and our Cahaba River keepers here. We got together and did last Saturday, did a cleanup day out at the local wildlife management area. And, it's a remote area. So people go out there and illegally dump trash and stuff like that. You see it in places. And so we went and cleaned up 6 of those sites, so it's also thinking about how can I also give back and do more, not just take and consume from as well.
That's a good point.
That's a big thing on talking about learning the population, making sure. I mean, if you've got these cameras and you're watching your properties or whatever you are, and you're seeing oh man, the deer are overpopulated or whatever it may be, that solid management of your small piece of private. There's this big animosity between, public land deer they're better than a private land deer. And, you see it on the internet all the time. And it's like, man, that public land deer you killed in most states, I guarantee spent 75% of its life on private land because that's what the percentage is. Now, is Montana a little different? Certainly. We've got ridiculous amounts of public land. There is probably more animals here that have spent their entire life on public land than on private. But that's not the point. It's this separation. And it's like, if the landowner is like, man, if I manage my property well, the surrounding deer are either going to come in for resources they're missing, and it's going to open that up, or perhaps if I have a really good thing, it can help serve as a seed population to where if the outsiding land doesn't have the numbers and I get them here, they're gonna leave the property when it runs out, and so it's a big thing in Texas. Obviously, there's a lot of fencing in Texas, and it's like, well, it's not. I'm not worried about my deer getting out. It's my neighbor's deer getting in. As a hunter, as a landowner, as a public land hunter, you got to be thinking about, it's not your deer, it's not their deer, it's the state's deer or the public's deer, and what can I do in my piece that's going to help everything, to your point. Sometimes that's a cleanup. I mean, I always joked growing up, Oregon had a deposit on beer cans back in the day, and so if we're out on the state forest, we picked them up. We'd always stop and pick up a beer can and throw it in the back of the truck, which always made for some interesting conversations with game boards when you're 16 driving around in the woods with beer cans in the back. But, we always do our part. And we actually got to the point where there a particular beer can in a particular size that if we found, it seemed like we'd have better luck that day. So we turned it into a game of like, you got to find a tall boy of hams when you're out hunting and get ready. It's game on. If you can find one of those, you're good to go. So
that's all.
Now this might be a simple yes or no question, but I could also see it being something where Justin just redneck nerds out on me. Is there a difference in the ethics behind trail cameras on public versus private?
I'm sure there's situations, being cognizant of your other hunter. Like if you're wanting to put out 20 cameras and it's your property and nobody else is in there, I think that's fine. I may not carry that ethic over if it's a heavily hunted piece of public, that I'm taking that opportunity for somebody else, to have some cameras out and learn. I think you can, but again, it's just being cognizant of your footprint and making sure what you're doing is not, having a deleterious effect on everybody around you,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just how many people, private or public doesn't matter. It's how many other people are out there, and are you messing up their opportunity, their enjoyment by using a camera? I mean, okay, some states have a deer season that goes right into elk season. If a guy's peak deer rut or something, I wouldn't be out there trompsing all over the woods, hanging cameras, getting ready for elk season. If I might mess up somebody's hunt, but that's what you got to be thinking about. I don't think the ethics are different. It's just, be a responsible sportsman and think about your actions.
And I think it comes down to what you just said, be it public or private. You have to learn that these deer is everybody's resource. They're not my deer. They're not your deer. And I recently, the property that I've hunted for years now, I've been so blessed that the neighboring property, nobody hunted. It was just a native grass, just, nobody used it. The dude lived in Tennessee. He would let me use it for access to get to my place, but he wouldn't let me hunt it. Anyways, it just recently sold. And I was like scared to death of like, man, I hope I don't have some butthead neighbors that come in and, want to micromanage me and how I hunt on my land. But they came in and they're great. Like, they're like, well, hey, if I share with you what I'm seeing, it's only going to help my deer, not my deer. It's only going to help the deer that I'm hunting. We're hunting the same deer, so we might as well, share stuff back and forth. So he would send me videos. I would send him videos and pictures from cameras and say, this guy just showed up. Haven't seen him before. This guy, and I don't know the guy at all. And some people that would scare to death to say, hey, here's a deer that just showed up. I've never seen him before. But he does the same for me. And we want to be communicating, and we come to an agreement. Like we'll say, like, I don't think he's big. Yeah, he's only 2.5. Let's let him walk, or this deer's old. If one of us get a chance at him, we should probably kill him. Like, we keep that communication going because we both understand that the deer are going back and forth. Like, they're not my deer and they're not his deer. It's everybody's resource. And if we work together, the wildlife is going to be better off. We're going to be better off. Everything's going to be better off when we come to the understanding, be it public or private, that these deer are not mine, but they're everybody's resource. This one just happens to be on my ground at this time, or this one just happens to be in front of me on the public at this time, or I have pictures of this deer on public, all year long. So does other people. Like, you're not the only person that's got a picture of that deer in its lifetime. So when we come to that understanding, I think we're all better off and we think about the wildlife better.
Yeah, and I think too, the one neat thing about the cell cams is, like I'm in a little hunting club, if you will. That's what we call them around here. It's we got some private land, we lease some land, and there's like six or seven of us in there. My brother-in-law, best friends. We're a tight group, and we've got like a little text message hunt camp group thing. We're always going back and forth, but with the Moultrie app, like I've got the cameras out there and all that. Well, I can share all those with the rest of the guys, so they just log into their Moultrie app and they get to see the cameras. And we keep them running year round. We run solar panels and things like that, so they just keep going. And we have conversations year round because of those cameras. Someone will post a picture because they went on that and they're like, man, check out these coyotes. We need to do something about it. Coyotes are always a hot topic. And, or it's like, oh, look, the fawns are dropping, or man, check out the antler growth. And it's just keeping us connected to that place we want to be at, even when we're not there. So it's like, even though we're not there and we're not putting pressure on the place, we're still getting that enjoyment of being able to follow and watch all that, and then of course in deer season, I mean, we're just texting like crazy, like, oh man, look at this buck that showed up and all that stuff. It makes it fun too.
It's also a great way. Like, my kids feel connected to what I'm doing in the woods because they get to see. I'm like, my kids know the names of my deer. Like, if I come home and I'm like, son, I saw the big 8, like he knows what deer I'm talking about. He's 6, but he's looked at pictures of these deer. Like he's watched these deer and he's looked through pictures with me, and same with my girls. Like, I mean, they get to see the deer that dad's out there chasing. Like, they get to feel like they're a part of it because they see the things happening. And one of the best pictures I have from my trail camera of all time, I've got some really cool pictures over the years. Second coolest I ever got was a hawk picking up a squirrel, and it caught it on camera. It was really cool. But the best picture I have, my son was with me last year when I shot my buck, and I get home and we're celebrating, we're excited, and it wasn't, I was tagged out, so I kind of stopped looking at the pictures for a couple of weeks, and I opened the camera and I hadn't realized that my son walked out in the field and he was standing right in front of the cameras with his hands up, like celebrating, pumping his fist. And I got a picture, it captured that on the trail camera. And so that's my favorite picture of all time from any trail camera I've ever got. I just thought it was so cool. Well, guys, more so than anything, we wanted to do this episode to inform you about the change at Pope and Young. No, it's not real recent, but I can't tell you how many times I still get the comment of like, well, you're the technology police. I can't even use cellular trail cameras. Well, we've changed that standpoint, and people are like, oh, really? I didn't even know that. So we wanted to inform you about the standpoint change. Yes, you can use cellular cameras. We're just encouraging you to consider the ethics behind them. We're encouraging you to consider your footprint. We're encouraging you to not abuse the technology that you have at your fingertips. And then I personally just want to encourage people to consider the why behind everything they do. Just ask yourself, is this benefiting the wildlife or not? Why am I doing this? Is it making a difference? Is it causing damage? Am I becoming self-reliant on this, or am I using it as a part of my arsenal, as a piece to what I do? Or am I solely reliant on this technology, on this format, on this, whatever it is that you're considering at the time? But gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Moultrie, Mark, let me just take time and say Pope and Young values your relationship immensely. We absolutely have adored working with you guys. I love using your products. It's in my opinion, it functions as one of the best cellular trail cameras I've ever used. Love the way the app works. Love the ease of use. They set up easy. Just a really nice camera. So from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate this relationship, and we appreciate you wanting to inform people on not just, hey, buy our cameras, but inform people on the ethics behind them, on the way to use them properly. And so we really appreciate that, and we can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah,
absolutely.
To echo that, there's plenty of companies out there and those that really care about conservation and have these discussions and are making sure that what they're doing is the best for the wildlife. Those are the ones that we should be, supporting. And I guess the final thing, Dylan, we never actually said what the official change was. It went from no cellular trail cameras to now on the affidavit, you sign that if you received information from the trail camera, it did not result in immediate response. So what that comes down to for those listening, I get up in the morning, I'm having my cup of coffee, I'm headed to stand A, and I get a picture and I'm like, oh, never mind, going to stand C. That's an immediate reaction. If we're hunting this weekend, you'd be going and checking cams Friday night anyway when you got into camp, and say Thursday you get a picture and you're like, oh, well, Saturday morning I think I'll go hunt the bean field. That's not going to be an immediate. And the hunter's going to sign that. Was it an immediate reaction? Did it result in immediate action? Or would this have been something I would have got off of a traditional camera? And yeah, we know it comes down to honesty, and we'd love the hunters to really think about that. Did this change what I was going to do? Well, in terms of immediately, if it did, yeah, you have to say, no, I'm sorry. But if it didn't and you're good signing it, it's not the technology, it's the use of it. And this is, hopefully the start of a few of these conversations, but the technology isn't inherently bad. It's how you conduct yourself as a hunter that Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett and all these organizations that talk about fair chase are concerned with. And it's to ensure hunters remain respected, hunting continues for generations to come, and the funding for North American wildlife continues. So it's not out of a we like it this way position. It is trying to do the best for all hunters, regardless of their weapons or whatever they want to do. That's why we're having these conversations. And Mark, we really do appreciate you being on.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate the conversation as well. And everything Pope and Young does. And yeah, I'm just, thank you guys. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah. And just to, before we go, I do want to echo Justin's point. There have been a lot of things over the years and some relatively recently that Pope and Young has changed on. And so I want to have these conversations for two reasons. I want the younger generation to understand why it was the standpoint in the beginning and then why we're changing it. But I also want the older generation that sometimes gets upset because of a change to understand why we're making the change. Because there's a lot of people that didn't want to see lighted sights introduced. There's a lot of people that didn't want to see lighted nocks used. There's a lot of people that didn't want to see the let-off change. There's a lot of people that didn't want to see, you name it, didn't want to see these changes in technology be accepted. However, there are reasons for us accepting those changes. We're not just doing it so that we can, be on the trend and do things that everybody else is doing it. We are doing them for a specific reason. So I want these conversations to be had about all of the recent changes in technology, why it was the standpoint in the beginning, and what led to the decision of it being changed. So this is the first of many, and we'll have those coming up, in the future as we continue to have these conversations. Guys, one of the easiest and cheapest ways to upgrade your bow is with a custom set of strings. A lot of people make custom strings, but very few people do it as well as Dominant Strands. Now, the reason I believe they do it really well is because Lewis over there at Dominant Strands, he has years of experience in the industry. His customer service is phenomenal. He offers an incredible wide range of different materials to build your next set of strings out of. And he just knows archery. Lewis is the guy, if I've got a bow that I just can't figure out, I call Lewis. He is incredibly informed, and he's ready to help you build the best set of strings for your bow. Go to dominant-strands.com and get your next bowstring today. Now, I tell everybody, the moment you get a recurve, the best and cheapest and easiest way to make that recurve faster, quieter, and shoot better is to get a custom string. Lewis makes a phenomenal string for a recurve. Guys, go to dominant-strands.com, use code typical10 to get 10% off your entire order, whether that's a set for your compound, a set for your crossbow, a new string for your recurve, any material, any colors. That code is going to get you 10% off your entire order. Dominant Strands, go check them out. I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I would just ask you to consider the ethics behind everything that you do. And as always, keep the dusty side up.